The cargo ship drifted toward the massive station like a moth approaching a lamp. Inside the bridge, Hyan-Woo watched the structure grow larger on his screens. It was beautiful in a way that made no sense to human eyes. The station, called Harmony 7, twisted and curved with organic shapes, all smooth lines and flowing metal. No sharp edges anywhere. No gun turrets. No armor plating. Just gentle curves that caught the light of the nearby star. Jisoo sat at the navigation console, her fingers dancing across the controls. She had been nervous for 3 days now, ever since they crossed into Coalition space. Their ship, the Taiwan's Dream, was small and ugly compared to the alien vessels they had passed. It had thick hull plating, redundant systems, and weapon mounts that were currently empty but obvious. The Coalition had made them remove all weapons before entering their territory. "They're scanning us again," Jisoo said quietly. "That's the 5th time in an hour." Hyun-Woo nodded. He understood. Humanity was new here. The Coalition had been peaceful for 3,000 years. Suddenly humans showed up with their paranoid designs and emergency protocols. Of course they were nervous. Daeon climbed up from the engine room, wiping grease from his hands. The chief engineer grinned as he looked at the station. "Think they'll like us?" "Probably not," Hyun-Woo replied. "But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk." The docking procedure took another hour. The Coalition systems kept asking for information the human computers didn't have. Security codes that humans had never heard of. Safety certifications that didn't exist on Earth. Eventually, a biological representative had to manually approve their docking. That was when Hyun-Woo first saw Rail. The alien stood 7 feet tall with feathers that shimmered blue and green. His eyes were large and kind, and he moved with a grace that seemed impossible. When he spoke, a translator device turned his chirping sounds into perfect Korean. "Welcome to Harmony 7, Rail said. His voice was gentle, almost musical. "I am Inspector Rail. I will be conducting your entry evaluation. Please understand, this is standard procedure. We mean no offense." "None taken," Hyun-Woo said. He offered his hand, then remembered aliens might not shake hands. Rail looked at the extended hand with curiosity, but didn't touch it. The inspection began immediately. Rail walked through the ship with 2 insectoid assistants who clicked and hummed as they took notes. The Coalition inspector seemed confused by everything he saw. Emergency bulkheads that could seal off sections of the ship, medical supplies that included surgical tools, fire suppression systems, escape pods. "Why do you need so many safety systems?" Rail asked. "Modern ships don't fail. The technology is proven over millennia." Taeyun laughed before he could stop himself. Sorry. It's just, on Earth, we plan for things to go wrong." "Because they do." Rail's feathers ruffled in what might have been confusion or concern. "But surely your civilization has moved beyond such primitive fears?" The real trouble started in the cargo bay. Hyun-Woo had known it would. The Coalition regulations were clear. No weapons. No dangerous materials. No items designed to cause fear or harm. But humans live by different rules. Rail opened a supply locker and froze. Inside were knives, emergency flares, climbing gear, and what looked like components for firearms. His feathers went flat against his body. "These are prohibited," Rail said. His gentle voice had turned cold. "These are weapons." "Those are tools," Hyun-Woo explained. "The knives are for cutting cables or opening sealed doors in emergencies. The flares are for signaling." "The climbing gear is for you are in space," Rail interrupted. "Why would you need to climb?" Hyun-Woo tried to find words that would make sense to someone who had never faced real danger. "Because sometimes things break. Sometimes you need to reach places the systems can't take you. Sometimes you need to survive." Another alien arrived then. Vess was an insectoid creature with 6 legs and crystalline eyes that reflected everything around her. She was the trade minister assigned to humanity's first contact, and she was clearly not impressed. "The human vessel carries fear-inducing materials," Vess announced. Her translated voice buzzed with authority. "This violates 17 different Coalition laws. I recommend immediate confiscation and quarantine of the crew until the station's alarms cut her off." The sound was soft and musical, nothing like the harsh klaxons on human ships. But the message was clear. Danger. Rail's device translated the announcement. Unidentified vessels approaching. All residents, please proceed to designated safe spaces. This is not a drill. Hyunwoo moved immediately. Training kicked in without thought. He ran to the bridge and pulled up the external cameras. 6 ships were approaching fast. They were small and mean-looking, built for speed and violence. Pirates. Every spacefaring civilization had them eventually. Jisoo, seal the ship. Daeon, get the engines hot. We might need to run. But the station wasn't responding like he expected. Through the windows, he could see aliens standing still. They weren't running or preparing to fight. They were just standing there, staring at screens and each other with what looked like complete shock. Rail appeared in the doorway. His feathers were puffed out and trembling. This cannot be happening. Violence is? We don't. This shouldn't be possible. The first pirate ship fired on the station. The shot wasn't even particularly powerful, just a warning blast that scorched the outer hull. But the effect on the aliens was immediate. Panic spread like fire. They ran in every direction with no coordination, no plan. Just pure terror. Hyunwoo grabbed Rail's shoulder. The alien was shaking. Have you ever been attacked before? No, Rail whispered. Never. We evolved beyond such things. We're civilized. Then you better learn fast, Hyunwoo said. He turned to his crew. Grab whatever tools we have. We're going to defend this station. Jisoo stared at her brother. We're 3 people. There are 6 pirate ships. I know, Hyunwoo replied. He grabbed a heavy wrench from the toolkit. But we're the only ones on this entire station who aren't frozen with fear. So it's us or nobody. Daeon picked up a cutting torch and grinned. It was a terrible dark grin. Just like old times, Captain. The pirates were boarding through the station's docking ports. They clearly expected no resistance. Probably didn't even know what resistance looked like. The coalition had been peaceful for so long that violence was just a concept from ancient history. Something that happened to primitive species on their way up. But humans remembered. Humans had never forgotten. The pirate raid on Harmony 7 ended badly for the pirates. 3 humans with improvised weapons held a choke point for 40 minutes while thousands of aliens cowered in safe rooms. By the time Coalition security finally organized a response, Hyunwoo and his crew had already disabled 2 boarding parties. The pirates retreated, confused and angry. They weren't used to prey that fought back. 2 days later, Commander Kree arrived at the station. He was reptilian, covered in blue-green scales that caught the light. His species was considered the Coalition's best military minds. Though Hyunwoo was starting to understand that meant very little, the Coalition military was more like a police force. They dealt with accidents and natural disasters, not combat. The pirates have fled to the outer colonies, Kree announced to the assembled group. His translator made his hissing sound firm and confident. We will pursue and apprehend them. This criminal behavior cannot stand. Hyunwoo raised his hand. What's your tactical plan? Kree's eyes focused on the human. We will locate their base and demand surrender. If they refuse, we will blockade until they see reason. And if they shoot at you? The question seemed to confuse Kree. Why would they continue aggression? We will demonstrate overwhelming force. They will understand resistance is illogical. Daeun muttered something in Korean that the translators wisely didn't pick up. Jisoo elbowed him quiet. But Hyunwoo understood his engineer's frustration. These aliens thought like prey animals. They thought predators would see strength and back down. They didn't understand that some creatures fight harder when cornered. Request permission to join the operation, Hyunwoo said. Denied, Kree replied immediately. Your species lacks proper protocols. You would endanger the operation with your primitive instincts. So the Coalition fleet left without them. 7 ships, impressive and gleaming, headed toward the mining colony where the pirates were hiding. The Taiwan's dream followed anyway, staying far enough back to avoid detection but close enough to help if needed. This is a bad idea, Jisoo said from her console. We're going to start an incident. The incident already started, Wu replied. "We're just making sure it doesn't end with a massacre." Their massacre. The mining colony orbited a dead world stripped of resources centuries ago. The structures were old and failing, perfect for criminals who wanted to hide. The Coalition fleet approached in perfect formation, broadcasting surrender demands on all frequencies. The pirates opened fire immediately. Through their sensors, the humans watched the Coalition ships scatter. No tactics. No return fire. Just panic. 2 ships collided, trying to escape. Another took damage and started venting atmosphere. The carefully organized fleet became a chaos of terrified aliens running from the first real violence they had ever faced. "Move us in," Wu ordered. "Full speed." Taiwan's dream wasn't a warship, but it was built by humans. That meant redundant shields, thick armor, and weapons mounts that could be filled in an emergency. Daeon had been busy during the 2-day journey. The cargo hauler now had mining lasers and explosive bolts that could do serious damage if aimed right. They hit the pirate formation from an unexpected angle. The pirates didn't even see them coming until the first laser carved through a ship's engine. Humans didn't announce their presence or demand surrender. They just fought. The battle lasted 8 minutes. The Taiwan's dream took hits that would have disabled a Coalition vessel, but human engineering held. When it was over, 4 pirate ships were destroyed or disabled. The rest had retreated deeper into the colony structures. Commander Kree's voice came over the radio, shaking with an emotion the translator couldn't quite capture. You destroyed them. Just destroyed them. We disabled them," Wu corrected. "And the fight isn't over. They're in the colony now. We need to go in and finish this." "No," Kree said. "We wait for reinforcements. We don't enter hostile territory without proper support and planning." But the pirates weren't waiting. Sensors showed them powering up an old weapons platform deep in the colony. If they got it online, they could destroy every ship in the area. "We can't wait," Wu insisted. "We need to move now." "I forbid it," Kree replied. "This is a Coalition operation. You will follow Coalition protocols or leave immediately." Wu looked at his crew. Jisoo nodded. Daeun was already checking his equipment. They had all made this choice before, back during the Mars Rebellion. Sometimes you didn't wait for permission to do the right thing. The mining colony was a maze of tunnels and chambers. It's carved into asteroids that had been pulled together and fused. The humans went in alone, moving through the darkness with lights mounted on their shoulders. The pirates had the advantage of numbers and position. But they had never fought anyone who hunted back. Wu moved through the corridors, like he was walking through his own home. Humans evolved as persistence hunters, chasing prey across endless plains until it collapsed from exhaustion. That same instinct made them perfect for this kind of fighting. Patient, relentless, unafraid to wait hours for the perfect moment. They found the first pirate group guarding a junction. 6 aliens with weapons they barely knew how to use. The humans waited until the guards got bored and careless, then struck fast and hard. The pirates never knew what hit them. The second group was smarter. They had set up a defensive position with clear sightlines and escape routes. But they made the mistake of thinking like Coalition prey. They set up to run if attacked, not to fight. Daeon circled around and hit them from behind while Wu provided covering fire. Military tactics that were thousands of years old on Earth, but completely new to these aliens. The weapons platform was at the colony's center. It's a massive chamber that had once processed, or a dozen pirates were working frantically to bring it online. They had minutes, at most, before it could fire. Jisoo planted charges on the support columns while her brother and Daeon kept the pirates pinned down. The aliens shot wildly, more interested in making noise than hitting targets. Human combat training emphasized accuracy and fire discipline. Every shot counted. Every movement had purpose. The charges went off precisely as planned. The platform collapsed in a shower of metal and sparks. The remaining pirates surrendered immediately, throwing down their weapons and cowering on the ground. They had finally learned what the Coalition had forgotten over millennia of peace. Violence has consequences. When Wu led the captured pirates back to the Coalition ships, he found Commander Kree standing at his airlock. The reptilian commander was trembling, his scales shifting through colors the human didn't recognize. "You went in alone," Kree said, "into a hostile environment with superior enemy numbers. You should have died." The mathematics of survival clearly indicated death. Haiyan Wu shrugged. "Math doesn't account for experience. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We know how to hunt. We know how to survive. But the fear," Kree whispered. "I felt it on the station. When the pirates attacked, I felt something I had never experienced. My body wanted to run. My mind screamed danger. How do you function with that?" "We don't ignore it," Jisoo explained. "We use it. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you alive. You just can't let it control you." Kree looked at the three humans with something close to horror. "Your species lives with that feeling constantly." "Not constantly," Daeon said. "But we remember it. We train for it. On Earth, everything wants to kill you. The weather, the animals, the diseases, each other. We evolved on a death world, Commander. This," he gestured at the colony, "this is just Tuesday for us." The Coalition ships limped back to Harmony 7 with their human escort. News of the battle spread fast. 3 humans had done what an entire Coalition fleet couldn't. They had fought predators and won. The galaxy was starting to understand that humanity was different in ways that went beyond culture or technology. They were different in the most fundamental way possible. Humans knew fear intimately, had lived with it for millions of years, and had learned to weaponize it. The Coalition had forgotten fear existed until it was too late. Now they were learning the lesson the hard way. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, something ancient was watching. Something that remembered when the galaxy was young and prey was plentiful. The Scourge was stirring from its long sleep, hungry and patient. It had learned long ago that fear made prey easy to catch. But it had never hunted humans before. Junho walked through the grand assembly hall with careful steps. The building was enormous, large enough to hold representatives from 847 different species. The architecture made no sense to human eyes. Gravity shifted in different sections to accommodate species that flew or swam or existed as pure energy. The lighting changed every few meters, adjusted for eyes that saw in different spectrums. Behind him, Hannah moved like a shadow. She was supposed to be his diplomatic aide, but everyone knew what she really was. Her eyes constantly scanned for threats, her body positioned to intercept danger before it reached Junho. Old habits from years of Special Forces work. "Relax," Junho said quietly in Korean. "We're among friends here." "Friends don't usually debate whether to quarantine your entire species," Hannah replied. But she smiled slightly as she said it. The human application for Coalition membership had been pending for 3 months now. 3 months since the incident at Harmony 7 and the mining colony. 3 months of the galaxy arguing about what to do with these strange, violent newcomers who fought like demons and refused to stay properly afraid. Elder Thelox waited for them in a side chamber. The ancient being was hard to describe. His species didn't have a fixed form, instead existing as a collection of crystalline structures that hummed and glowed with inner light. He was 800 years old and had seen more of the galaxy than any living being. "Ambassador Junho," Thelox's voice resonated from somewhere within the crystals. "We must talk before the vote. There are things you need to understand." "I'm listening," Junho said. "The Coalition is afraid of you. Not just uncomfortable or concerned. Actually, genuinely afraid. Do you understand how remarkable that is? We eliminated fear from our societies thousands of years ago. We consider it a disease, a malfunction of primitive nervous systems. But humans bring it back just by existing." Junho sat down carefully on a bench designed for a species twice his size. "We can't help what we are. We evolved on a dangerous world. Fear kept our ancestors alive." "I know," Thelox said. "I have studied your history files. Your wars, your weapons. Your capacity for violence is..." The crystal being seemed to struggle for words. "It is beyond what we thought possible for a spacefaring race. Most species, eliminate such tendencies before they reach the stars. Those that don't typically destroy themselves. But humans? You kept the violence and learned to control it. Barely. Is that a compliment or a condemnation? Neither. It is an observation. And it terrifies the assembly. Anna spoke up from her position by the door. Then why are we here? Why not just refuse membership and be done with it? The Lox's crystals shifted color, cycling through shades the human eye couldn't quite process. Because the scourge has returned. The words hung in the air like a curse. Gunho had heard rumors, whispers of attacks on outer colonies, ships that went missing, entire stations going dark without warning. But the coalition government had been quiet about it, releasing only vague statements about investigating disturbances. Tell me about the scourge, Junho said. They are hunger-given form, Thelox explained. 50,000 years ago, they nearly destroyed the galaxy. They consumed everything in their path. Entire civilizations. Billions of lives. The coalition of that era fought them for 1,000 years and barely survived. In the end, we didn't defeat them. We just made the cost of hunting us too high. They went dormant, sleeping in the dark spaces between stars. And now they're awake. Yes, 3 months ago, the same time you arrived. Perhaps coincidence, perhaps not. They have attacked 17 colonies so far, killed over 2 million beings. And the coalition military? Thelox dimmed slightly. We cannot stop them. We have forgotten how to fight, how to face fear. Our ships run, and our soldiers freeze when confronted with real violence. We are lambs before wolves. Junho understood now why the timing of their membership vote was so important. The coalition needed humans. Needed their violence and their weapons and their complete inability to stay properly terrified. But admitting that meant admitting their entire civilization was built on a foundation that crumbled the moment real danger appeared. What do you want from us? Junho asked. I want you to survive the vote, Thelox said. Many in the assembly want to deny your membership. They believe humans are too dangerous, too unpredictable. They would rather face the scourge alone than let your species into our society. They are fools, but they are numerous. Then what do you suggest? Tell them the truth. Show them what you are. Let them see the violence and the fear and the terrible beauty of a species that refuses to give up. Some will reject you for it, but others will understand that survival sometimes requires fangs. The assembly session began 2 hours later. Junho stood at the central podium while hundreds of aliens watched from their various sections. Some floated in anti-gravity fields. Others peered from tanks of liquid. A few existed only as projections, their bodies too massive or too distant to attend in person. The opposition spoke first. A dignified representative from a species that looked like walking plants outlined humanity's crimes. The wars, the weapons of mass destruction. The casual acceptance of violence as a tool of policy. Earth's history was played on screens around the chamber. Armies clashing, cities burning, nuclear explosions blooming like terrible flowers. This is what humans are, the plant being concluded. They are chaos wrapped in flesh. They celebrate violence in their entertainment. Their children play games about war. They have never known true peace because peace requires the elimination of fear, and humans clutch their fear like treasure. Junho waited until the chamber was silent. Then he spoke. Everything you just said is true, he began. We are violent. We are dangerous. We have killed each other in numbers that horrify you. We have built weapons that could sterilize planets. We have waged wars that lasted generations. And you're right to be afraid of that. Murmurs spread through the assembly. This wasn't the defensive speech they expected. But let me tell you what else is true, Gunho continued. Humans have survived 3 ice ages. We've bounced back from plagues that killed half our population. We've been knocked down to the edge of extinction multiple times, and every time we got back up. You know why? Because we're afraid. Because fear teaches. Because every disaster makes us stronger. He pulled up new images on the screens. Human doctors fighting diseases, engineers building in hostile environments, rescue workers running toward danger while others fled. We don't just use fear for violence. We use it to protect, to save, to never, ever give up, even when logic says we should. You evolved in safe environments, Junho said, looking around at the diverse species. You eliminated predators from your worlds early. You built perfect societies without danger. That's beautiful. That's admirable. But it left you vulnerable. The Scourge doesn't care about your laws or your peace or your 3,000 years without war. They're predators, and predators only understand one thing. He let the silence stretch. You need us. Not because we're better than you or more advanced or more civilized. You need us because we're the only species in this entire galaxy that still remembers how to hunt. The plant representative spoke up again. You admit you are predators? You admit you are dangerous? Yes, Junho said simply. And that's exactly what you need right now. The debate went on for hours. Species argued about risks and benefits, about what humanity's presence would mean for the Coalition's identity. Some spoke passionately for inclusion. Others warned of the dangers of accepting a species that hadn't evolved beyond violence. Then the alarms started. They were gentle, like everything in Coalition space. Soft chimes that indicated urgent news. But the message that followed was anything but gentle. The Scourge had attacked a core world. Not an outer colony, but a full-member planet with 3 billion residents. The assault was already underway. The assembly chamber erupted into panic. Representatives scattered, calling for emergency evacuations and military response. The dignified discussion dissolved into chaos within seconds. Junho stood at the podium watching them flee. Beside him, Hannah had her hand on her weapon out of pure instinct. Even here, in the safest place in the galaxy. Humans prepared for violence. Elder Thelox appeared beside them, his crystals pulsing rapidly. The vote is suspended. We must evacuate, No Junho said. Call the vote now. Right now, while they're afraid, act. That would be manipulative. It would violate every principle of fair deliberation. Your principles are about to get 3 billion people killed, Hannah said harshly. Call the vote. The Lox was silent for a long moment. Then his crystals blazed bright. Emergency vote. All representatives cast your decision on human membership now. We have 60 seconds. The votes came in fast. Representatives punched their decisions from evacuation ships and hiding places and anywhere they could reach a console. Fear made them honest. Fear made them practical. The results appeared on the central display. 712 in favor. 135 against. Humanity is accepted into the Galactic Coalition, Thelox announced. Effective immediately. Ambassador Junho, your species now has full rights and responsibilities, including military obligations. Junho smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Then we better get to work. How fast can you get us to that core world? Admiral Taijan studied the tactical display with the calm expression of a man who had seen worse. The holographic projection showed the planet Karasnine at the center, surrounded by a swarm of red dots that represented Scourge vessels. 523 ships, each one a nightmare of biological engineering. They pulsed and writhed like living things, because they were living things. The Scourge didn't build ships. They grew them. The human fleet numbered 30 ships. 30 against 500. The mathematics were brutal and clear. Coalition forces have withdrawn to defensive positions around their core worlds, Commander Yuna reported from her station. The fighter pilot had been recalled from training exercises to join this desperate mission. They're offering long-range support only. Taijin understood. The Coalition was terrified. They had sent their newest members, their pet humans, to face the monster they couldn't fight. If humanity won, the Coalition would be grateful. If humanity lost, well, they had only been members for 3 days anyway. How long until the planet falls? Taijin asked. 8 hours, the tactical officer replied. The Scourge is overwhelming their orbital defenses. Once those fall, they'll begin consuming the population. 8 hours. 3 billion lives. The weight of it should have been crushing, but Taijin had carried such weights before. During the Titan Wars, He had made decisions that cost thousands of lives to save millions. You didn't become an admiral by avoiding hard choices. All ships, Battle Formation Eco 7. Fighter wings, prepare for immediate launch. Marine units, stand by for boarding operations. The orders flowed down through the fleet. 30 human ships moved into attack position. They were small compared to the Scourge vessels, but they were built by a species that understood war. Every ship carried weapons that violated a dozen coalition treaties. Nuclear missiles, kinetic kill vehicles, weapons designed not to disable, but to destroy. We're receiving a transmission from the Scourge, the communications officer said. Surprise in his voice. Put it through. The voice that came through was like nothing Taijin had ever heard. It spoke in perfect Korean, but the words felt wrong, like something was wearing the language like a costume. You are the humans. We have heard of you. The species that still knows fear. Interesting. This is Admiral Taijin of the Human Defense Fleet. You are ordered to withdraw from Keras 9 immediately.
Laughter.
Not human laughter, but something that approximated it. We are the Morpheus Swarm. We have consumed galaxies. We have fed on civilizations older than your species has existed. You cannot stop us, little hunters. You can only delay us. Then let us delay you, Taijin said calmly. All ships engage at will. The human fleet dove into the Scourge formation like knives into flesh. Coalition observers watching from safe distances gasped at the reckless aggression. Human ships flew straight at the enemy without hesitation, their weapons blazing. They didn't try to maintain formation or follow proper combat doctrine. They just attacked. Yuna led the first fighter wing directly into the heart of the Scourge swarm. Her squadron of 20 pilots faced hundreds of biofighters that moved like insects, fast and twitching. The coalition had tried to fight them and failed, pilots freezing when the enemy got too close. But human pilots had trained for this. They had spent years in simulators fighting impossible odds, learning to function when fear tried to shut them down. Yuna's voice cut across the squadron channel, steady and cold. Remember your training. They're fast, but predictable. Watch for the wing flutter before they turn. Kill the engines first. They can't maneuver without thrust. The fighters danced through space, human pilots, trusting instincts, honed over thousands of hours. They lost 3 ships in the first minute, 7 more in the second. But they took down 40 Scourge fighters and opened a hole in the enemy formation. Breach confirmed, Yuna reported. Her voice didn't shake, even though her fighter was streaming atmosphere from a dozen holes. Capital ships, you have a window. Taijin didn't waste the opportunity. 6 human destroyers punched through the gap, their hulls screaming with damage as Scourge weapons tore at them. 1 destroyer exploded, its nuclear reactor going critical and taking a dozen enemy ships with it. The others kept going. They reached the Scourge command vessel, a massive thing that looked more like a tumor than a ship. It pulsed with sickly light and dripped biological waste into space. This was where the Morpheus Swarm's intelligence centered, the brain that coordinated the entire attack. This is Destroyer Squadron Alpha, the lead captain reported. We're positioning for nuclear deployment. Taijin watched on his display as 5 ships surrounded the command vessel. This was the plan. Simple, brutal, effective. Ram nuclear warheads directly into the enemy's brain and detonate them all at once. You have authorization, Taijin said. Godspeed. The destroyer captains knew they wouldn't survive. The blast radius would consume their ships along with the target, but they didn't hesitate. Human ships accelerated toward the command vessel while the Scourge tried desperately to stop them. 2 destroyers were torn apart before reaching their target. 3 made it through. The nuclear detonation lit up space like a new sun. For a moment, everyone watching had to shield their eyes or dim their sensors. When the light faded, the Scourge command vessel was gone. Just debris and radiation where it had been. The Scourge swarm immediately lost coordination. The individual ships kept fighting, but without the unified intelligence directing them. They became predictable, vulnerable. All units pressed the attack, Taijin ordered. We break them now. On the planet's surface, Marine Sergeant Jury led her unit through the city streets. The Scourge had already landed ground forces, creatures that looked like nightmares given flesh. They were consuming everything, breaking down buildings and people alike into basic organic material. Jury's Marines fought them block by block. 20 soldiers against thousands of creatures. They used every advantage their training and equipment provided. They set traps. They used the terrain. They never stopped moving, never let the enemy pin them down. The coalition military observers couldn't understand what they were seeing. Human soldiers were taking casualties at a rate that should have caused immediate retreat. But they kept fighting. When they ran out of ammunition, they used knives. When the knives broke, they used their hands. Why don't they flee? A coalition observer asked. The logic of survival demands retreat, because someone has to hold the line. Jury's voice came back over the open channel. She was wounded, her armor cracked and leaking. Because there are civilians behind us. Because that's what we do. Her unit was down to 8 soldiers when the reinforcements finally arrived. Coalition forces, emboldened by the human example, were entering the battle. They were clumsy and afraid, but they were trying, learning, fighting. Jury led her remaining Marines in a final push to secure a shelter full of civilians. They killed dozens of Scourge creatures in close combat, using tactics that were ancient when humans still hunted with stone tools. Surround, isolate, eliminate. The shelter was saved. 800 civilians survived because 20 humans refused to run. In space, the battle was turning. The human fleet was down to 19 ships, all heavily damaged. But the Scourge was breaking. Without their command vessel, their coordination was failing. Coalition ships were finding their courage, joining the fight in growing numbers. YUNA single quotes fighter was barely holding together. Her squadron was down to 4 ships from the original 20. But they kept flying, kept fighting. When her weapons ran dry, she used her damaged fighter as a battering ram, destroying 2 more Scourge ships before ejecting at the last second. "This is Fighter Command," she transmitted as she drifted in her escape pod. "The sky is clear. Repeat. Local space is clear of hostile forces." Taijin allowed himself a moment of relief. They had one. At a terrible cost, but they had one. The Scourge was retreating, pulling back from Karis 9. The Morpheus swarm had learned something new today. It had learned that humans didn't break easily. The casualty reports came in over the next hour. 1,500 dead, 3,000 wounded, 11 ships destroyed or too damaged to save, numbers that would have devastated any coalition force. But the planet was saved. 3 billion lives continued because humans were willing to pay the price. Later, as the surviving ships limped toward repair stations, Taijin received a transmission from the Coalition High Command. They wanted to thank him. To express their gratitude and horror and amazement, he didn't answer it right away. Instead, he stood at the window of his damaged flagship and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Scourge was regrouping. Planning, learning, good Taijin thought. Let them learn. Let them understand what it means to hunt humans. We don't give up. We don't surrender. Push us to the edge, and we push back harder. The Morpheus swarm had ruled the darkness between stars for 50,000 years. They had never met a species that fought back the way humans did. A species that turned fear into fuel instead of letting it become paralysis. The real war was just beginning. And for the first time in 50,000 years, the Scourge was the one learning to be afraid. 3 months after the Battle of Karis 9, Ambassador Soon walked through the halls of the Coalition Assembly with a weariness that went deeper than physical exhaustion. The building had been repaired since the panic during the vote, the damage from fleeing representatives hastily fixed. But something had changed that couldn't be repaired. The Coalition had lost its innocence. The war was going badly. The Scourge had launched a full invasion with 10,000 ships across 50 star systems. The Coalition was hemorrhaging territory. Worlds were falling weekly. The death toll was climbing into the hundreds of millions. Only humanity stood in the way of complete collapse. Chayun, the human historian assigned to document the war, was waiting in Soon's office. She looked exhausted too. They all did. Every human in Coalition space had been working around the clock for 3 months, trying to teach an entire galaxy how to fight. The latest casualty reports, Chaewon said, sliding a datapad across the desk. Earth wants you to see them before the assembly meeting. Soong read the numbers and felt sick. 80,000 human dead in the last month alone. Earth's entire military had been mobilized. 2 million soldiers spread across dozens of worlds. 5,000 ships, nearly everything humanity could build or crew. They were bleeding themselves dry to hold the line. The assembly wants to negotiate with the Scourge, Sung said quietly. They think if we offer tribute, the swarm will leave us alone. Will they? No, the Scourge doesn't negotiate. They consume. But the assembly is desperate. They're looking for any answer that doesn't involve more fighting. What about us? What do humans want? Sung looked out his window at the stars. We want to survive. We want everyone to survive. But we can't do it alone anymore. The Coalition has to fight. Really fight, not just support from a distance. Or we're all going to die. The assembly meeting that afternoon was tense. Representatives from 800 species crowded the chamber, all arguing about strategy and resources and blame. Some wanted to commit more forces to the war. Others wanted to pull back and defend only the core worlds. A few still clung to the hope of negotiation. Elder Thelox called for silence. The ancient crystalline being had become the unofficial leader during the crisis, the only voice that all species respected. We must face reality. The Scourge is winning. They have taken 47 worlds in 3 months. Our military is in chaos. Only the human forces have achieved consistent victories. At what cost? A representative demanded. The humans are dying in thousands. Their casualties are unsustainable. All casualties are unsustainable, Thelox replied. But humans fight while we debate. They die while we hide. This cannot continue. Song stood up. He hadn't planned to speak, but the frustration was too much. You want to know what humans want? We want you to fight. We've been training your soldiers, teaching your pilots, showing your commanders basic tactics that we learned thousands of years ago. But you can't learn courage from a manual. We are trying, a coalition military commander protested. But our soldiers panic when facing the Scourge. Our entire psychology is different. We don't have your capacity for controlled violence. Then develop it, Sung said harshly. Or accept extinction. Those are your choices. The Scourge isn't going to stop because you ask nicely. They don't care about your peace or your civilization or your 3,000 years without war. They only understand strength. We are not humans, the plant being representative said. We cannot become predators just because you tell us to. You don't have to become predators. You just have to stop being prey. The argument was interrupted by urgent alarms. Not the gentle chimes of previous emergencies, but harsh klaxons that hurt alien ears. The kind of alarms humans had installed after taking over security protocols. The Scourge had found the Coalition's primary shipyards. The industrial complex that built 90% of their vessels was under attack. If it fell, the Coalition would lose any ability to replace their losses. How long until it's overrun? Delox asked. For hours, the tactical officer reported. We have minimal defenses in place. The Scourge arrived with overwhelming force. Sung was already moving toward the exit. How many human ships can we get there? None, Thelox said. Your forces are spread across a dozen battlefronts. The nearest fleet would take 8 hours to arrive, and send what coalition forces you have. Every ship, every soldier. We hold that shipyard, or we lose the war, without humans to lead them. ... The military commander trailed off. Then they learn, Sung said. Today, right now. They learn, or they die. The Battle of the Shipyards became the turning point. Not because of brilliant tactics or superior technology. Not because of human intervention or miraculous weapons. It became the turning point because the Coalition finally learned what humans had been trying to teach them for 3 months. Commander Kree, the reptilian officer who had frozen during the pirate attack, led the defense. He had spent the last 3 months training with human instructors, learning to function despite fear. His fleet of 200 coalition ships faced a Scourge force twice that size. The first assault went badly. Coalition ships broke formation when the Scourge attacked. Pilots panicked. Crews froze. It looked like another disaster, but then something changed. A young pilot named Velis, barely out of training, saw his squadron leader's ship destroyed. Instead of fleeing, he remembered what his human instructor had taught him. He imagined the fear as fuel, something to be used, not avoided. He turned his fighter around and attacked. One ship, then another, then a dozen. Coalition forces that had spent 3,000 years running from danger suddenly remembered how to stand their ground. They took casualties. Ships were destroyed. Soldiers died. But they didn't run Trell. Crackard had happened with a feeling he couldn't name. His scaled hide was slick with the chemical markers of fear, his body screaming at him to flee. But he stayed. He commanded. He fought. All ships. Focus fire on the command clusters, he ordered. His voice only shook a little. Use pattern Delta 3, make every shot count. It was a human tactic. Concentrate fire. Eliminate command structures. Fight smart rather than strong. The coalition had the numbers but lacked the instinct for violence. So they used intelligence instead. They planned. They coordinated. They learned. The battle lasted 3 hours. The coalition lost 60 ships, but the shipyards held. The Scourge retreated, having lost more than they could afford in what should have been an easy victory. When the casualty reports came in, Kree stared at them for a long time. 12,000 dead from his fleet alone. Numbers that would have been unthinkable 3 months ago. Numbers that were now just another day in the war. But they had one. Without humans to hold their hands, without humanity's weapons or tactics or special forces, they had one because they chose to stand and fight instead of run. The victory at the shipyards wasn't the end of the war. The Scourge was still strong, still dangerous. But it marked the moment when the coalition stopped being victims and became fighters. Human instructors spread across every fleet and unit, teaching the lessons Earth had learned through blood and fire over thousands of years. The war ground on for 6 more weeks. 53 star systems became battlegrounds. Billions died, humans and aliens alike. The Scourge learned that the galaxy had grown fangs again. They didn't like it. The final confrontation came at the Scourge homeworld, a dark planet in a system where stars went to die. The Morpheus swarm had gathered its remaining forces there, preparing for a last stand. The coalition fleet numbered 15,000 ships, the largest armada ever assembled. Half were coalition vessels. The other half flew human colors. Admiral Taijin commanded the human forces. Commander Kree led the coalition fleet. They had learned to work together, human aggression and alien ingenuity combining into something neither could achieve alone. The battle lasted 3 days. The Scourge fought with desperate fury. They knew what defeat meant. 50,000 years of dominance ending at the hands of prey that had learned to bite back. On the second day, Taijin's flagship was crippled by a suicide attack. He transferred command to his second and led a boarding party into a Scourge bioship. They fought through corridors of living flesh, using flamethrowers and explosives to burn their way to the ship's brain. On the third day, coalition forces learned the hardest lesson of all. Kree led an assault on the Scourge's central hive, the physical location where the Morpheus swarm's consciousness lived. His soldiers took 80% casualties fighting through the hive's defenses. But they reached the core. The Morpheus swarm tried to negotiate in those final moments. It offered knowledge, technology, anything to survive. Kree thought about the 47 worlds that had been consumed, the billions who had died, the 3 months of horror and blood. He thought about how much the coalition had changed, how much they had lost. No, Kree said simply, and he gave the order to fire. The destruction of the Morpheus swarm sent shockwaves across the galaxy. The ancient horror was finally gone, burned away by species it had dismissed as prey. The cost was staggering. 380,000 humans dead, over 1 billion coalition casualties, entire species reduced to fragments, 53 star systems scarred by war, but they had survived. A year after the war ended, they built a memorial on the shipyards.